morning. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Ahmad Chehime. I'm the product sales specialist focusing on Cisco's next generation networking technology, an SDN-based architecture and SDN-based solution. I've been in Cisco for 15 years, so I've had my share of changing technologies. I've started in Cisco in San Jose, the Silicon Valley. I've started working on service providers. I moved into the enterprise the last 6 years. And I can only tell you that things change in the networking world, in the networking industry, constantly, okay? And we are about to experience the next big change in the networking world. And what I want to give you, 30 minutes is not fair. There's not enough to tell you what's about to happen and what is happening now in the industry. But I'm going to try my best to summarize in the next half an hour to give you a glimpse, and hopefully you can go and ask the right question after this, okay?
Well, I appreciate it actually if it's only 20 minutes. I know it's more pressure, but please. Thank
okay,
you.
I actually was, okay, perfect. Let's try and give you an idea of what it is. So, I'm going to skip the main question that I'm going to answer, or I'm going to try and share with you is, what is this SDN about? How different than what we're doing today, and what Cisco is doing? These three questions, okay? My colleagues here covered a lot about what I'm going to cover next, which is really the application trends, whether it's Microsoft Azure, whether it is the different cloud platforms or different applications and the data center facilities. But the most important question, two questions that you want to always ask is, why do we build data centers in the first place? We build data centers in the first place are for two main things. For applications that we just talked about, to make sure that these applications run really well, and the information that we're gonna save in the data center and allow the applications to access this information and utilize this information to create new services. But in order for that to happen, you need a network. You need a network infrastructure that is gonna connect the applications and the information, and not just connect them, optimize the performance of connecting the applications to the information and back, and vice versa. And also allow people from the outside world to access this information and access those applications efficiently and with an optimized manner, okay? That's why we have data, that's why we have data centers, and that's why we build data centers, okay, for applications. So it makes sense for Cisco when we went and we started looking at, okay, what is the next generation data center architecture or network is gonna look like? We said, well, let's go back and find out why we're building those data centers and what do we need to do. We found out that the most important thing is applications, and what we need to really make the infrastructure cater for the requirements and needs of those applications, okay? So I'm gonna skip a lot of different things, but one of the key trends that I haven't heard about today, actually you've heard it, but I'm gonna just, it's all about cloud and a lot of computing, but what does that mean, okay? So there's a lot of trends. One of the key questions that pops up to people's mind is, okay, you've heard about Microsoft Azure and what they're doing and allowing you to go and reserve and allocate resources on demand. Did you ever ask the question of what's underneath that infrastructure? How Microsoft is doing this? And what do they have to do in order to enable you to go on that website and request that service that you are requesting? That's a very important question. Well, you know what? That's what SDN is going to come and help with, is to answer that question. Towards the end of the day, when we look at some of the key asks and applications trends, and the trends in the data center to cater for those applications, is we want to dynamically allocate resources. And around November and Christmas time, Amazon have an influx of new users. They're going to come and request and go to their websites and request a whole new or buy a whole new product. That means the infrastructure that is serving the influx of people have to really, on demand, allocate more resources and also decommission these resources in January and February. So how are we going to really have that dynamics? And is Amazon going to go every time around November and Christmas time, is going to go and really start a project and implement a whole new infrastructure? No, the answer is not. So the key trend here that I want to really highlight is how can we create a transparent infrastructure, a pool of resources. And And that will change depending on the concept. So if Microsoft Azure is putting it in the public and allowing public people, anybody to access it, that's called public cloud. Well, if an organization, an enterprise or a government entity, they decide to implement the same concept as what you just heard in Microsoft Azure, we're going to put it on our own premise. That's a private cloud. But the concept is the same. Abstract the network, abstract the resources in the data center completely. You do not need to know what's running there. You're going to go to Microsoft Azure, request the service that you want, consume that service without knowing what's happening underneath. That's the future. That's what SDN is. Okay? So let's quickly move into a little more on what I'm gonna skip. So I can't answer the question. Yes, SDN promises to give us or to really provide what I just explained to you, okay? But I usually have an interact with the audience and ask this question: what does SDN mean to you? Or to whoever you think, have you heard about SDN? What does it mean? So every time I ask this question, I get a lot of different responses from people. And I just put in some of those responses. I'm just gonna quickly read them. So some of them is a way to reduce the CapEx of my infrastructure. I don't want to spend a lot of money on the hardware anymore. I want to use commodity switches, commodity infrastructure, and remove the intelligence into a software-based control. That's one way of thinking about it. Another way is I want to be able to control that infrastructure the way I want it. Okay? And the most important thing, and I stop at this, is I want to have a global view on every single thing in that infrastructure. So if for a second, imagine that underneath this, there is network infrastructure. Your data center is right under this podium here, completely, okay? But it's covered. And what I'm gonna tell you is, this is the future of how you're really gonna operate. This is how Microsoft is implementing their cloud, right? In order for the operations team or the IT organization to touch and configure that infrastructure, you need to come to one person, me, okay? In order to come to me, I'm gonna have to provide you an interface to communicate with me and allow you to configure whatever you want on this infrastructure. And what's important is regardless of what components or network devices underneath this infrastructure, okay? So what SDN is trying to do, what some people think SDN is gonna solve for them, is it's gonna give them that control, a central point of control and command for the entire infrastructure, okay? At the same time, give them a global view of that infrastructure. And not just that, also is gonna allow them to and one of the key important thing is not just the view. Today you have a lot of network monitoring tool that you will be able to utilize to manage your network and find out how the network look like, okay? But the most important thing is, how can I configure every single device? How can I configure a Cisco switch or a non-Cisco switch, an F5 security appliance or an F5 load balancer or any device underneath that cover without dedicating engineers, without having every engineer go to that training and come back and now you sit and learn how to configure this particular device. And another person for Cisco, another person for another device, okay? And as you change devices, you need to repeat the same cycle. So the days of having people sitting, and I was one of them for a long time, sitting in front of those devices and configuring every single thing on every single device, those days are over. And that's the new world of networking, okay? But the question is, how are we gonna do this, right? How are we gonna automate that process? And hopefully I'm gonna tell you in a second how, okay? So the SDN has been a very confusing concept to a lot of people. Actually, the most common question that we get when customers visit us in our executive briefing centers in San Jose or in other parts of the world is this: what is SDN, right? And really, what we feel, there's a lot of new companies out there. Everybody's associating themselves with the SDN technology and the SDN trend. But the important question is, okay, what each one of them is doing as part of this whole thing that I just described to you. And everybody is doing different things, okay? So SDN market is confusing. Okay, we established that a lot of people do not know what SDN is or what can do for them. Okay, but before you ask what is SDN can do for me, is we need to ask a different question. What is the problem that SDN is trying to solve? Okay, and do you have some of those problems in your organization? Then the question is not what SDN can do for you, is what do you want SDN to do for you? Okay, identify what are the key challenges that you have today. How do you envision your next gen data center or your next gen network? Okay, and what the goals are that you want to set. And now you switch gear and talk to different vendors and find out how their SDN solution is going to make you achieve what you want to achieve. What we noticed is this. I'm sorry, I'm going to skip a lot of this stuff because of the time, okay? What we've noticed is what they want is they want to have this level of abstraction. They want to manage and simplify the administration of this network underneath this and have full visibility. Visibility of every single application's performance traversing this network infrastructure. To put this in graphical use, so you have a lot of different applications today. Okay, what we want to is we want to allow these applications to run anywhere in the network, anywhere in the data center, any data center. Whether it's this data center here in Kuwait or another data center in another location, doesn't matter. Okay, but what we want is to be able to move those applications from one place to another, and it's also want to give you a visibility of the health and the performance of this application. And we want to give you the ability to answer a question that IT operations team hate, which is, how can I troubleshoot a request that comes to me on Friday night saying that this application performance is slow? It's not I cannot access the application. This application performance is slow. It's different problem. Application I cannot access, okay, we can troubleshoot the problem, we can do certain things in the network, find out what the problem is, easier. It's still hard, but you can still find it. But why when I click on a website, this website does not respond to me? What's the problem? That's a performance issue of that particular application. So what we're gonna do in our next gen is we're gonna monitor every single packet. We're gonna tag every single packet and give you a view, a dashboard on a per application basis and tell you that application A has a health score of 100%. That means there's no packet drops in the network or in the data center underneath this, and there is no latency. The latency is acceptable. Another application dashboard, you will see a health score of 80%. Well, we're gonna dig deeper into that and tell you that the latency is okay, but we see packet drops. When we see packet drops in the infrastructure, we're gonna zoom into that area where the packet drops are there, and we're gonna take you there and tell you what switch, what device is dropping this packet, and what port is dropping that packet. Okay? So, the three key things that we keep hearing from people, so I mean the whole industry, SDN, came about is because people are complaining and really have serious issues. Do you really think that the Amazon or the Facebook or the Google of the world building these massive data centers, they have people, operation teams, they're gonna go and configure every single device? No. That's definitely not the answer, and that's where the request has been coming towards the networking world and the networking industry and the networking vendors. And I said, please open up your devices. And the concept that I told you about, and I wanted you to just keep in mind as a picture this is, of you want to have the single point of control for that network infrastructure, abstracted completely. I am your control. This is called a controller, okay? Every single device underneath this, I'm gonna be able to speak with it in a specific language. You don't care how I speak to it. This is my business. I have to develop it. And any device underneath this, if they want to speak to me, to be managed, to be controlled by me, the controller, you need to install a specific kind of protocol agent to understand that language of me talking to you. Okay, so that's great. We covered that piece. How I'm going to configure everything and how they're going to expose all the different functionalities that they have to you. Now you have all of the different admins. They're going to come and request a specific request to be implemented on the network. I'm going to expose to you a specific file with a lot of multiple choice. It's not, I'm simplifying this, by the way, okay? It's not as simple as that, okay? But it's just to get the point across. I'm gonna provide you with an interface. Come to that interface, put all your requirement in there. Security admin, come and put your security requirement. Application admin, come put your application requirement. Network admin, come and find out how you're gonna connect all of this together, the application tiers, okay? DevOps people, everybody come in here. Here is all the different functionalities I'm gonna provide to you in a web interface, an XML interface, okay? And how we're gonna populate that interface is whatever the device communicate to the controller and tell them, I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 functionalities. If they expose those functionalities to the controller, then the controller will expose it to you. You will be able to choose that, okay? That's the world of software-defined networking. Is how can we, if you leave with one key point, is how can we stop touching every single device? How can we abstract that infrastructure? You don't need to see it. And the example I wanted to leave with you is the example of Windows Azure. You're gonna go, request resources, you have no idea what's happening under the cover. Take that model, implement it in the enterprise or in your government entity or whatever it is, whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud. Now what SDN is, I mean, I'm oversimplifying here, is it's gonna allow you to administer this network, configure it, and optimize it. That's the most important thing. How do you optimize the application? It's not just configuring it. Today we can go and write a script and automate the configuration on these different switches, okay? But how can we optimize it to the needs of that applications? So in Cisco, what we wanted to do is we wanted to do little things a little differently. We wanted to teach the network about the applications. We want the application to tell the network what the requirements are, and the network will behave accordingly. And how we're gonna do this is by single application profile. I'm gonna jump into a single picture, and then I'll end, and that will illustrate what I'm trying to do. I'm sorry, I cannot go through any of this. I really thought it was an hour session, by the way. It's whoever told me gave me wrong information. But anyway, here's that slide that I want to really leave you with. Okay. So Cisco SDN strategy or Cisco solution to the SDN world is how can we really bring all of these different people, and this, by the way, is an application-centric infrastructure, ACI. Okay, you're gonna hear a lot about it. Every single vendor you're gonna talk about, they're gonna come and talk to you about SDN. Okay, because the world is gonna change. Every single vendor have to come up with their own SDN flavor to the market. Okay, so this is Cisco's flavor. Okay, and the flavor is as follows. You have network infrastructure, you have the policy model, you have the policy model, and you have something what we call the controller. So you have a controller, you have an infrastructure, which is the different switches and the different devices underneath, okay, and you have a policy model, how you're gonna communicate with me, and how I'm gonna communicate with the equipment. That by itself is an innovation, by the way, okay? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring the different people into this application network profile, okay? And we're gonna ask everyone to enter his requirement. Security guy, enter your requirement. The connectivity policy, what is the security policy? What is the layer 4 to layer 7 policy that you want to be implemented in this, okay? And then we're gonna put it all in one file. That will build how the traffic of that particular application you're trying to implement, how is logically going to traverse that network or that data center, and we're going to put it in that file, and then what we're going to do is we're going to give that file to the controller, and the controller is going to push it down to the infrastructure. Just keep this picture in mind. This is where the world is moving, okay? How are you going to do this? How the different concept of SDN are, there are different models of SDN, by the way, and different people are trying to do different things, okay? But similar concept. Controller, a lot of people underneath have to open up their devices. Open up, that means allow us to communicate and talk and instruct and command, okay? That's the world of programmability and open APIs, okay? And also very important is not just opening up to talk southbound, but also opening up and talking from you, allowing me to talk to me, so you can configure and instruct the network to do what you want. Okay, so I'll stop right here, and this is what I really want to leave you with in terms of how, after you configure this, how we're going to keep track of every single application and give you that health score of every single application. Okay? In 20 minutes, or half an hour, that's all I can do. I'm so sorry. I would have loved to spend a lot more time. This is a really exciting field, an exciting future for networking. I'll be here. Reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to tell you a lot more details.